were just discussing that after the lunch, this session is there. But I hope you all will be very active. You will participate in the discussion. And so the financial literacy, which you will be listening since morning, I'm quite confident that everybody is concerned because we are observing a lot of digital frauds, digital arrest, and so many things. So even the educated people, the successful businessmen, successful entrepreneurs are, victims for these type of digital frauds and many other things. I would start the discussion with Mr. Alok ji. Mr. Alok Kumar Jena is the CEO of National Center for Financial Assistance. And so you are promoted by RBI, SEBI, IRDI, PFRDA, I suppose सारा भार जो है वो आपके कंधे पर है ना? तो मुझे लगता है कि you are concerned about financial literacy to individuals for the personal finance, retirement benefit, insurance, MSME, and everything. Whosoever wants to have any financial literacy, perhaps I could see that you are responsible and you will be doing a lot of activities. But still, if we see that insurance sector, only about 4% are covered. If we see the MSME finance, 90% are not getting any finance from the formal sector. What do you feel is the sector which needs more literacy to bridge this gap?
Thank you, Mr. Gupta. In fact, post-launch session, as he said, would be a bit difficult. Financial literacy, as you said, is I think it's not just a subject to discuss. I think it's a necessity for everyone now. I think in many countries it's a fundamental right also. What we do as an institution, which has been formed by 4 regulators, we have a strategy. We call it as National Strategy for Financial Education. The strategy has been devised, especially the current strategies from 20 to 25, which has been the mandate is to make each and every Indian financially literate. We have been talking about financial literacy and inclusion, I think for last 20 years, almost 2 decades, starting from Mr. Rangarajan committee where they focused on inclusion first. In fact, the belief was at the policy level, if the inclusion happens, it will lead to education. And in fact, they started with banking inclusion, then they talked about insurance, then talked about pension planning and also the investments. All these 4 regulators have been doing on their own this inclusion activities plus education activities. But in many countries, if you take the best global practices, if you take the data from many countries, especially the Scandinavian countries where the financial literacy is very high, and there is a correlation between the financial literacy and also the frauds that is happening. In fact, where the literacy is high, the delinquency is also less. So coming back to the strategy that we have been doing, there is a divide between various sections, communities. In fact, the strategy focused about 5 C's. They talked about communication, they talked about contents, they talked about capacity, they talked about collaboration, and it's a strategy, is a multi-stakeholder strategy where everyone is involved, everyone is doing its own way, their efforts, and we are, in fact, have been responsible for coordinating the activities of all the players, those who are involved in both inclusion and education. And before this strategy, there was a survey conducted on all India basis where they found that only 23% of the total populations of India are financially literate. And here the measurement of literacy was done as per the OECD framework, where this is globally followed in terms of not just transactional knowledge. They talked about 3 parameters like knowledge, behavior and also attitude. And they have specific measurement framework for all this. So the survey said that the survey was conducted in 2019. It said 23% of the total populations in India are financially literate. And there is a gender divide where the male populations are literate to the extent of 29% and female are 21%. There is a geographical divide. There is a education divide. Means if the educational qualification is more, the financial literacy is also more. There also the employment divide, different types of employment. There also the literacy varies from different employment to employment. So the emphasis area, as you said, where the literacy is low, the emphasis area would be specially targeted there. Again, there is a divide like rural-urban divide. The rural area obviously has less financial literacy vis-a-vis urban areas. So the strategy said that we have to specifically focus in the areas where the financial literacy rate is low and also the communities where the financial literacy is low. So they talked about you devise specific contents for specific communities. There cannot be one particular strategy or the umbrella strategy where you say that this particular strategy will be adopted for each and every segment or each and every populations. So what we have done, we have devised different strategies in terms of contents that will be developed, in terms of pedagogy or the communications methodology by which the financial literacy contents is to be taught, or maybe the innovative, the digital technology that has been, now we are talking about digital frauds or digital arrest, how that can be prevented. In fact, there is a direct correlation between a person who is literate financially, the susceptibility to fraud is less. So that literacy part should be emphasized. In fact, it was also shown by OECD studies, including India, where they said that where the education precedes inclusion, the fraud, the possibility of fraud is much less. So our emphasis area, as you said, is mostly where the literacy rate is low, and the strategy is according to the community that they are targeted.
Thank you. Sir, so you have explained it very nicely, but my next question will be from Charan Singh, sir. Low literacy may be one of the reasons, but what we have seen, sir, but since you had been at the top of a bank as the non-executive chairman, so I would like to understand that, when we say that MSMEs are not getting finance from the formal sector, so if the literacy is required at the micro or small enterprises, or some financial literacy is required to be taught to the bankers also, so that they understand that what is the need, demand of the micro enterprises, how it can be fulfilled, what are the parameters to arrange some, or to sanction some collateral-free loan to these MSMEs, because most of the bankers are.
So this is an extremely important issue that you have raised. Much before I became the chairman of public sector bank in our country, which I then served for about 5 years, I had done lots of research on MSMEs in Pina, in Bangalore, as a RBI chair professor. And my research is on the website of IIM Bangalore, the series of working papers. One of it we did for ADBI also. Even that is there on IIM Bangalore and ADBI website. Now the issue that we were surprised to look there is, and I'm talking of Pina in Bangalore. It's a financial nerve center for the country. Many industries, MSMEs, were not even aware of the schemes that the government of India was running for them. And I was looking at, is it because the people who are running the MSMEs are illiterate in terms of educational qualifications? Even that wasn't true. Then what is the catch? Many reasons, but I would totally concur with you that even the financial institutions which have been tasked to go and extend credit to MSMEs, they have a big responsibility of going to them and spreading the word. I would go a step further. I would say, and during that time of my work at IIM Bangalore, I realized it's not only the enthusiasm of the banker in reaching out to the MSME and extending credit, or at least making them aware the type of schemes the government has, or the type of schemes that the commercial bank has. The problem is, even the government to that extent have come out with various schemes, and each one of them is one better than the other. But then how do they go and reach out to the MSMEs and say, look, we have a cafeteria approach for you. If this is what you are, this is what we have. You need a short-term financing, medium-term, long-term. You need a real long-term. You need to buy an asset. You need for credit. Whatever you need, we have some scheme for you. And the government is doing this not out of altruism. You and me all know in this room that MSMEs are the segments which will provide maximum opportunities and employment for our youth. If you have to ensure that the country's demographic dividend does not become a disaster but continues to be a dividend, it's not agriculture which is going to provide jobs. And now, especially with AI and ML, it's not even the public sector which is going to provide jobs. It is the MSMEs. Everybody will have to be an entrepreneur, provide jobs. So the government is doing out of compulsion and rightly doing it. The bankers have the money, but MSMEs are not even aware that there are such schemes available by the government and by the banker. Now, while the board of a bank knows what the government wants and is coming out with schemes, translating them on the ground with the MSMEs is a very big challenge. How do you do it? Now, I'm of the age where when I used to be growing up, we in our country did not have enough food. So what did we do? We started with agriculture universities. And then every evening, I remember from 5 to 5:30, there used to be a half-an-hour program on All India Radio on Krishi. Yes. And they will tell you, ye mosam, now this is the seed, sow it, now this is the type of problems coming up in the crop, this is the manure to be used, so much water for different crops. Today, agriculture universities, and thanks to the agriculture literacy through All India Radio and other things, we are not only food sufficient, we are exporters of food now. Similarly, I think we are in a transition. And therefore, similarly, I have been suggesting now is the time to start an MSME university where we will do lots of research on MSMEs, which will also include how to communicate with the MSME owners and entrepreneurs. We will also generate entrepreneurs. Remember, as an economist, I can tell you, agriculture has been a subject of mainstream economics courses for last 100 years, starting from bachelor's. But we were never food sufficient just because we taught our children agriculture. We became food sufficient when we had dedicated agriculture universities, because agriculture universities looked at various aspects of agriculture, including how to tell the farmer what to grow, when to harvest, what manure to use, what fertilizers, how much of water, how to measure the precipitation, and all those things. Similarly, I think time has come that we have to educate the bureaucrats, the bankers, and the MSMEs. And the entrepreneurs we need to generate, we need to handhold them, and we need a 360-degree sort of an approach or a strategy so that what the government is doing translates on the ground. So to that extent, the question that you have asked, should the bankers be educated? Certainly yes. And I am going 2 steps ahead and saying, not only the bankers, even the policy makers in the country and the entrepreneurs. We need an all-round literacy campaign on a mission mode. Only then we'll be able to reach out to them. Now we have financial institutions, SIDBI is dedicated. You also know, you've been on the board yourself, that lending to MSME is part of the priority sector lending. And despite that, my own research in PINIA and my interaction with other scholars and other researchers and with other MSMEs, I have found that that knowledge is not disseminating to that level. So the last point I want to make here is, there are about 6,000 products which MSMEs make. 6,000 products. Each state has a specialization in MSMEs. We are sitting very close to Haryana and UP. UP, almost every district specializes in something which MSMEs can do. When such huge potential of research and investment exists, I think our strategy on MSMEs and the financial literacy towards MSMEs have to change. Thank you.
It's great, sir. Thank you very much. And just on a lighter part, I'll just share one thing, sir. As far as the information dissemination is concerned and the awareness is concerned, as a hobby, I started a YouTube channel on the MSME schemes by different stakeholders. तो शुरू में मेरा बड़ा लोगों ने मजाक उड़ाया, ये कौन देखता है? It was pre-COVID. By that time, I suppose it was not so famous, these YouTube and all those things. So मुझे लोगों ने मजाक उड़ाया कि क्या ये जोक सुनाओ, गाने गाओ YouTube पर, ये क्या कर रहे हो आप, ये कौन देखेगा? Today I am happy to share that we have more than 5 crore viewership and more than 1 million subscriber on that. We try to post each and every scheme on this MSME helpline platform. But sir, I can assure you that government is also concerned. You will be aware that recently it was announced in the budget also, and I used to call this budget as an MSME budget. So many announcements by the government, and one announcement was that there will be relook on the compliances by the businesses. The committee has already been formed at the very top level, directly under the supervision of the PMO, and all the ministries are working very hard. We have also given certain suggestions. So the time is for MSME. और मुझे लगता है कि ये जो 5 ट्रिलियन इकोनॉमी की बात हम करते हैं, और if we are talking about the विकसित भारत, MSMEs will play very important role. But राकेश जी, मैं आपसे ये पूछना चाहता हूँ कि हम 5 ट्रिलियन US$ की बात करते हैं, विकसित भारत की बात करते हैं. So how does financial literacy contribute to this sustainable economic growth?
Thank you, Mukesh ji. So I think these topics are amorphous to my mind: financial literacy, financial education, financial awareness, because this would have different connotations and meanings for the different segments that we care for. When we talk about a rural user, for him a basic financial literacy of how to operate his or her account is the basic financial literacy. When we go to a sophisticated user like us sitting here, the connotation changes. Of course, I'll come to the digital arrest separately. And then about the financial awareness that Charan Singh ji just mentioned about the various schemes that are available, and unfortunately because of lack of awareness or lack of integration, many of the beneficiaries are not able to avail of this. Of course, MSME is the cornerstone of the Indian economy, be it 5 trillion economy or 10 trillion economy, whatever we talk about. And we just got over with the largest trinity of our Mahakumbh Mela, but I think the largest trinity for me or for any of the financially included individual in this country would be, which is JAM, which we call it Jan Dhan accounts, Aadhaar, or the mobile penetrations. So if we see the 3 vertices of this triangle, with Jan Dhan account, whatever 52 crore odd accounts got, individuals got included in the kind of formal banking system. Of course, it needs to be seen how many of these accounts are active, but of course the government is making every effort to integrate them with the direct benefit transfers and also that they continue to remain active. Aadhaar seeding has been one of the biggest worldwide movement, I must say, which enabled a lot of things, including UPI transactions and all. As we speak, I think the numbers which we say, I think in the month of January, around 1600 crore odd transactions were executed through UPI. दिल्ली में छोड़िए कहीं भी हम बाहर भी जाते हैं तो अब I think payment करने की ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ती. Most of the fruit vendors will also be compliant to take UPI payments and also, again, mobile penetration has made it possible. So from the economic prosperity perspective, of course, MSME segment plays a critical role. The outdated number is 63 million odd MSA enterprises are active in the country. To my mind, possibly this number could be anything around 150 million because this is a 10, 12-year-old data. In last 10 years, of course, this numbers would have gone a significant change. This leads to approximately 2x in the terms of number of employment. The last registered number is 11 crore number, but again, this could be around 20 odd crore. But what is important is on the MSME segment, also the smaller segment, which is micro or the nano segment. Nano segment in our parlance at the Michael Dell Foundation, we call anyone who is generating annual revenues between 10 lakhs to 1 crore. These are small kirana stores operating in our vicinity day to day, small manufacturers or the traders, shopkeepers and all. For them, access to credit was always a challenge. They would reach out to money lenders in their vicinity who possibly would charge them 10%, but not on annual basis, possibly on a monthly basis or 5%. So translating into 48 to 60% interest rates, where the formal credit rate in this country at this point of time anywhere 10 to 12%. Of course, then came the era of MFI and then now physical NBFCs as we call them, which has got a physical touch, but they do a lot of integration with because of the technology and all, and are able to kind of underwrite credit for this segment who operate in the informal economy, as in they would not have a lot of credit history, their business would not be operated in a formal nature where they would have kind of account keeping and rest of the things. So a lot of physical NBFCs have come into play who are enabling credit to them. So for the nano segment, the segment that I mentioned, the potential credit demand is approximately $25 billion, which is 2 lakh crore, and the number of this enterprises is approximately 1.1, 1.2 crore in the country. I think this is a segment where if you are able to provide credit at around 24 odd %, maybe with 2 years of credit history, good credit history, they eventually will transit into a formal lending system. I mean, more regular formal lending system where the interest rates could be anywhere like 17 to 18% and eventually then graduate into 12 to 14% where we have access. So I think if you are able to unlock credit to this segment through the various initiatives that are being taken by all the stakeholders, the government, the private bodies, a lot of banks, NBFCs, and impact givers like us, I think that is when critically unlocking of this credit will lead to 5 trillion, 8 trillion, whatever that number is according to me.
Yeah, correct. And one more thing, in fact, what I feel that MSME financing cannot be a balance sheet based funding. And this suggestion was given by us in a pre-budget consultation meeting to the Honorable Finance Minister also, and it has already been accepted and has been announced in the budget also. I normally used to say कि आपको MSME से क्या चाहिए? You want to see their turnover, the GST is there for the companies or the enterprises which are within the ambit of GST. You take the GST username, password, you get all the information. You will be able to know many things, the turnover, the monthly turnover, the number of customers, diversification, compliant. Then you want to know whether they are doing all the transaction through bank, you take their bank account. With the bank account, you will be able to analyze whether they are paying any amount to the non-related parties or so on and so forth. Then you have their income tax return. And for the past, you have their credit bureau scores and ranking. Though I have some certain reservation on the ranking system which has been adopted by the credit bureaus, I'm taking it very seriously because what we have seen that CMR rating which is called, आज 2 है, there is a 1-day delay and the ranking goes to 8 and 9 and they are not bankable in fact. So I'm taking up with the government that किसने इनको अधिकार दिया हमारी ranking decide करने की, the MSME ranking. So that is one thing. But Anil ji, I would like to understand कि आप मैं देख रहा था कि you do lot of studies And in one of your study, you told that, you concluded that the women entrepreneur in Bangladesh are confident, business acumen and growth aspiration equal to men. What, according to you, is the situation in India, which doesn't seem to be as good as you have observed in Bangladesh? And what will be your suggestion so that more and more women entrepreneurs are there in our country?
So thanks. I think finally we are talking about some gender sensitive stuff. I hope men can take notice of it, right? So what we are seeing actually in multiple markets is there is a lesser and lesser women participation at all levels, including in small enterprises. I think this is given. This is no discovery. There is no science behind it. There are a lot of social factors around it. Only thing is that if I were to compare our neighbor, which is Bangladesh, we may find that 20% of our MSMEs, they are women-owned. We call it women-led businesses, versus less than 10% in Bangladesh. So probably we can say we are a little better off as compared to that. But if we look at how they are faring versus what we are doing in India, probably there is some similarity and there are a lot of differences. And one major difference comes from the fact their ability and their aspiration that what they want is equal to what is available to their male counterparts. This is something I think, I don't know, like, is it a social conditioning or this is years of societal progress that we have seen in India? Probably that kind of things are still not there. But if you really talk to women in India and particularly entrepreneurs in India, what we see, actually we see several trends. And one of the trend is that if we ask them that, are you running your own enterprise or someone else is doing it for you? Nearly 1 out of 5 will say their husbands or their spouses are running for it. In fact, in today's Indian Express, if you see, there was a first news on the right side, if I remember correctly. There they are talking about, if you look at the Panchayati Raj system, you have women as representative. They are supposed to come and they have to occupy the position of Sarpanch. And I come from Rajasthan, they call it SP, which is Sarpanch Pati. At some places, they call it some other name. So basically what's really happening, women are elected, but men are running it. So this is something which you see very prevalent across India. And of course, government has recently taken a notice of it, and they are saying that we are going to set it right. So a large part of this applies in our businesses also. That is one very important thing that we observe. And second is when we say women-owned enterprises or women-led businesses, unfortunately, women do not associate themselves with business alone. It is family. So one of the work that we have done recently about the financial health, what it tells you, like, because there was a lot of debate, should we keep business separate or should we mix household with the business? Particularly if you're talking about smaller business, and more so if these are being run by women, generally they are running from small places which happen to be in their home, and they are not able to distinguish between household expenses versus their business expenses. So they remain like more or less similar. So that's the second thing that we clearly observe. Third is that if we look at the resilience part of it, so see, all businesses in India or anywhere in the world, we want resilience. In the sense, this applies to us as individuals also. If there is some wrong event or there is some event that happens, for which do we have any safety? So typically for most of us, it comes from the insurance, whether it's a health insurance or the life insurance or say any type of general insurance. For businesses, it comes from their ability to generate cash flows, and to some extent, they can get it from the insurance. What we have seen, a COVID type of situation, of course, it doesn't happen very often, but anything else can happen. For example, in coastal area, say, for example, some of the work that we do in Philippines, it tells us that people are living in the coastal area. Every now and then, they are impacted by the typhoons, and their businesses are disrupted. Same thing happened with us while COVID came in, and we realized that there was a high mortality. And that's a reason, like, I think you also pointed out the number of MSMEs in India, 63 million. If you really look at it, for several years, we are talking about 63 million, such numbers. I don't know for sure whether it's the right number, but it's high likelihood that it is the number, because many, they have gone down, new have come in, and hence, net, we are somewhere there only. So and in fact, the last report which has come from the ministry, it was 22, 23. It also talks about the same number. So it hasn't changed the number. So like these are some of the things. And I think one more point that just I want to make is that when we look at the enterprises, particularly women enterprises, we typically want to use a small framework. We are consultants, so we typically use frameworks in all our life. So we call it SAFE, S-A-F-E. SAFE stands for sustainable. So sustainable typically means that whether the enterprise that you are running is sustainable, that is something that we have seen it is not the case. More so for small enterprises and much more so when it comes to women enterprises. The second is all about autonomous. If I am running the business, if I am an entrepreneur, how can I run my business on my own? So in case of women, it becomes fairly challenging in a country like India. And third part is F stands for formal. And we all know, actually there has been a lot of discussion even before we started this panel, that how many of them they are on Udyam and all those things. But reality of the life is that there are more than 95% women businesses which are informal in nature. That's a humongous number. And in fact, this number is around 69% if I talk about overall enterprises. So this is the third part, because if you are not formal, there are a lot of things which can come to you, but you cannot get it. And Bangladesh faces acute problem. There is a problem of like identification and formalization. Unless they do it, they cannot access anything. So they face a different type of challenge. And the fourth is E stands for employment generation, because this is the key. If you look at what's really happening in India, we have the lowest productivity. Though we are part of a global value chain, we will be under pressure unless we improve our productivity. And what's really happening in women enterprises is the employment generation ability is fairly limited. Reason is very simple. Again, see, most of them, they are running one single person enterprise. Most of them are being supported by their families. So basically, it doesn't generate the employment. So that's a reason we use, like if you put a SAFE framework and you see that where do you stand. Actually, this can broadly apply to all type of enterprises, whether it's a small or maybe not as small as we are talking about, maybe say 20 crore, 30 crore organization. How do you fare actually on those four dimensions? I'll stop here.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe many women will be running their businesses under SHGs and so on. But मुझे कोई doubt नहीं है that we have lot many successful women entrepreneurs. और हमारी दिल्ली में तो देखिए अभी chief minister and the leader of opposition both are women. So we have many successful women entrepreneurs in the country. Yeah. Yeah. आपने जो बात कही that from where this 6 crore numbers came, and it is we are listening this number since last about 6-7 years. मैं बताता हूँ आपको. So for the first time, I suppose in the year 2018-19, every year Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprise issue the annual report. And this number precisely 6.33 crore. This was the number which was mentioned in the annual report of perhaps 2018-19. I had been fortunate to be part of various committee of the ministry, and मैंने हर minister से पूछा, every MSME minister asked कि सर वो 6 करोड़ लोग हैं कहाँ? Do you have the data actually in 6 करोड़ लोगों का? Because even the उद्योग आधार which was earlier before this Udyam registration was not having that much of number. But वो कहीं से data कुछ किया होगा, आया होगा. But I am happy to share now that as of today, if we go to the Udyam registration site, you will have the details of more than 6 crore MSMEs, जिनका number data है उनके पास.
Because see, if I look at the data from say what's happening in Bangladesh type of country, which is a very small economy as compared to us, this number is comparable. So I don't think that we do not have these many numbers. Probably we have more than that. But no one knows for sure. That's the only limited.
पर मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि आज कम से कम 15 करोड़ जरूर MSMEs होंगे हमारे कंट्री में. This is my feeling. Yeah, and because earlier the traders were also not included in the MSME definition. Now the traders are also included. So definitely we'll be having not less than 15 crore MSMEs in the country, registered or unregistered. Alok ji, I would like to understand that we are talking about the micro enterprises and so on and so forth. And as per the details available on the Udyam registration, also more than 90-95% MSMEs are from the micro enterprises. But we have good number of small and medium enterprises also. And now with the increase in the definition, so investment up to 125 crore and turnover up to 500 crore will be covered under the MSME. And many MSMEs or SMEs are going for the public issue also through SME IPO route. But we have seen in recent past that there were various negative news related to SME IPOs ki ek char motorcycle wala and there was a setback of one of the SME IPO. Fortunately, unfortunately, we did that analysis and we submitted and somehow SEBI came to know about our analysis. People are, coming up with the IPO on the basis of the object that they will purchase some software from a company which is a shell company, so on and so forth. What will be your advice to these SMEs and to the retail investors who are, just jumping to buy the shares of these SME and the subscriber base has gone to 400 times, 500 times. They know or don't know what this company do. So what will be your advice, because you represent SEBI is also part of your organization. So what will be your advice to these SMEs and as well as the retail investors?
Before coming to that specific issues, the real issues with the MSMEs in India is the funding part of it. In fact, if you take that three segments, micro, small and medium, the three ways of taking money from the market, one is your equity capital, debt capital, or the loans from the banks. There are a lot of huge issues in that, both in equity capital and debt capital, issues of pricing, issues of valuations. There are a lot of issues on that, where the market prices its whale or not based on the information. Sometimes the history of information not available in all those. Regarding the SEBI's restrictions, I think SEBI has been working from the point of view of the investors, investor protection rather. What SEBI says, when an MSME comes to the market, there should be some informations and also protections for the investor, primary investor who is going to invest. Especially, I think SEBI has said clearly regarding the operating profit, there should be some minimum size during last 3 years. Post-issue capital, what should be the size and all this. Promoters, generally, they offer for sale model, how they should behave post-issue, in fact. All these are the investment protection measures. Then what should be the individual shareholding limits in that. And also SEBI talks about the General Corporate Purpose Fund, GCP funds they call it. And also the lock-in period for excess from promoters holding, how long they should continue with the company. And finally, the quality of disclosures in the prospects, the information that goes to the investors. In fact, those things, all these 7 or 8 criteria that SEBI has prescribed, it's for the mostly investors' point of view, investors' protections. So when an investor is investing or trying to invest in these shares, as I said before, the pricing is a huge issue in case of MSMEs, and also knowing the information about MSME is a huge issue. But the market sometimes goes about the grey markets, informations and all those, that really misleads many of the investors. So SEBI has of late become more proactive on those issues, saying that unless these criteria are satisfied or a particular company doesn't behave properly as per the guidelines laid down, they will not be allowed to raise money from the market. From the financial literacy perspective for the investors, I think we have been trying that, making a lot of investors awareness campaign regarding specifically SMEs, when those who are coming to the market. In fact, there are many good SMEs. They're not able to raise capital from the market because their publicity measures and their way they interact with the market is also very feeble in terms of passing on the information. So in that case, maybe SMEs should also be aware of this fact. And market, if you see these investors, like this particular example where it was subscribed, oversubscribed 400 times, whereas that was cancelled. So money is not an issue flowing into the MSMEs, but how that is being used, I think SEBI is more concerned about it. So from the investor's perspective, knowing the company, proper informations, and passing on the information is more important. From the MSME perspective, I think going to the market at the right time and passing on the right kind of information is very, very important as far as the publicity is concerned.
Thank you. Anilji,
Can I add
yeah,
something?
please, please.
So I think as far as the investor protection is concerned, my sense is just not the SME IPOs, but any IPOs or any public market. In a bull run, there are many gullible investors who are lured because of higher returns and get trapped into it. So that is a continuous process through financial literacy. Whatever other initiatives are in play will continue to get evolved to kind of curb that piece. But it's the larger, I think, wise here is the human psychology. As far as the, I think, disclosures or other things are concerned, the onus is also on the intermediaries, the book running lead managers or the legal advisors who are advising this not so, I must say, genuine SMEs capable to raise capital, but kind of participating with them in their paperwork and all. I think if the regulations become more stringent the way it is for the other IPOs and all, possibly this intermediaries will get dissuaded, and then eventually there will be a reduction in this fraud kind of SME IPOs to come into the market, I think.
Yeah, true. Anilji, if I want to ask you, can you just let us know some of the innovative approach maybe, or some of the activities which you are doing for the financial literacy from your organization?
Okay, so let me try to answer that. And before that, just want to add on the what's happening on the SME IPO. I think there's a lot of stress that we should be regulating them more and all this thing. I just want to share one data point which has come out from a report. I think I really don't know how many of us really know. So there is a ORF paper which was published a couple of years back. It says there are 1,536 laws that govern doing business in India, of which 678 are at a national level, rest are at the state level. And within this web of law, can you imagine how many compliances are really required? 69,233 compliances. 69,233 compliances, of which 25,537 are at union level, at the central level. And how do you communicate? You have to communicate through 6,618 annual filing, of which 1/3 are at national level and 2/3 at the state level. It's not that each company has to do it. So let's be aware of this fact, because you also mentioned that this is something which is work in progress. The other point related to this is that if you look at these 1,536 laws which are governing doing business in India, more than half of them, they carry imprisonment clause, right? And out of 69,000, 70,000 compliances that I was talking about, nearly 26,000 of them, so 2 out of every 5, they carry imprisonment clause, and more than half of the clause can imprison an entrepreneur by at least 1 year. So let's be mindful. Actually, this is too much. Actually, to me, if someone were to ask me what is the single most important thing holding unleashing of MSME potential in India, is our archaic regulations or policies. So coming to your question, because let market decide. It's that, see, there were hundreds of SME IPOs which happened in the market. It's not that all of them they were bad. Few of them they were bad, and the same applies even the regular IPOs. There have been, like, forget about even private sector IPOs. Public sector IPOs have also been like that. LIC is a case in point. It's nearly several years, and now government wants to disinvest the second round of it. So let the market decide it. Actually, instead of say we are trying to regulate each and everything in the thing. So coming to like a lot of things which like based on our work that we do with small enterprises, what we see is that what is that they need. So whenever we go into this process that if you were to work with small enterprises, first we need to understand what are their needs. So generally divide this into 4 parts. One is what we call them venture building. So venture building will have different meaning for different people. It could be like, say, someone who is the early stage of entrepreneurship, they are looking at that, how do you identify the opportunities? If someone is already doing some bit of it, they require some bit of training or skilling, which could be soft skilling also. One more thing which definitely our work suggests that they require mentoring and networking, and it applies for everyone who is a very small enterprises to someone like, say, who is a 100 crore enterprise. All of them, they need mentoring and networking, and this is something that typically we miss actually whenever we are working with them. And of course, the talent part of it. So this is one actually very important block that we say venture building is very important. Second is, I think you also mentioned about access to finance, but I will slightly change that access to finance typically shouldn't rest only with credit. So we need to have multiple instruments which can be credit, debit, hybrid of it, receivable finance, or invoice discounting. A lot of options are available, alternate options are available. We need to have those options, and access to finance will include going beyond credit, wherein we are talking about how do you build resilience actually over a period of time. The third is, instead of saying market linkage, I would say that this is more about market expansion. This includes both that what is that you need to link. So say one of the experiment that we have done with few women enterprises is that we have connected them with the marketplace through an interface. Instead of bringing directly them to on a digital platform, which was very difficult, we brought them through an intermediary, and it was much easier for them to work in. So one part is this, and second part is how do you diversify your product? Because what we are consuming today is what we will consume tomorrow, there may be a difference. So how do you make sure that you have the diversified pool of product which people want to consume? So that's a second part of it. And the last is business support services. To us, actually, regulation, compliance, everything falls under that. And I just want to conclude with one more point is that there is a more and more focus considering the global value chain and focus on ESG. I think this is the time for small enterprises to think and work on that. How do you basically be relevant in sustainable business operation? What do I mean by sustainable business operation? Like you're compliant with the ESG, and probably particularly you are looking at decarbonization of your footprints. So say, for example, many of the manufacturing, they are using still coal-based furnace. Can you move to electric fired furnace? So this is more sustainable business, lesser carbon footprints, and high chances that even many of the funding community, they will also come back, they'll say, oh, I will lend only if you are green, or you're generating lesser carbon. So you basically preempt some of these things and you remain resilient. So that is how I would.
ESG is really very, very important. In fact, the younger generation will definitely face a lot of heat, definitely. And how many of you are MSMEs, by the way? Are there any MSME in this hall? So are you aware of the JET certification? Zero effect, zero defect. So perhaps that can also play a very important role. बट सर मुझे आपसे एक बात जरूर पूछनी होगी कि आपने 6 करोड़ के लिए तो जरूर पूछा हमसे, हम भी आपसे पूछेंगे what are these 60,000 odd laws and the compliances, क्योंकि because I am working on this compliance burden कैसे कम किया जाए with the government, and I have been invited by various ministries to discuss these issues, and today morning itself we were just preparing the day wise कि आपको मतलब how any MSME can run their business कि 1 तारीख को क्या क्या करने हैं, 2 को क्या करने हैं, 3 को क्या करने हैं, every day 30 days, monthly, then quarterly, then annually, कभी ROC की फाइल करना होता है, कभी इनकम टैक्स की फाइल करना होता है, कभी GST, लेबर लॉज, so many compliances are there, तो उनको कैसे करेगा, वो करता रहे या बिजनेस करे. So only one, but I would be happy to connect with you to understand all these.
So I'll share this paper. There is a ORF paper. Observation Research Foundation has done this paper. In fact, this was quoted very recently in one or other conversation. So I got little intrigued actually. That's the reason I thought I'll just.
So MSMEs are facing, though the time is up, but the last question, Charan Singh sir, I would like to understand from you. आपकी मैं report देख रहा था recently. You did a MSME facing challenges in doing business. So one challenge why we were just discussing the compliances. What do you feel is the biggest challenge being faced by these MSMEs?
I'll come back to that point again that I made in my initial remarks. There are numerous challenges which MSMEs are facing. Finance, of course, is the most important one, I would say. And why finance is most important is because you've been a bank, I've been in the bank. We know that the banker is not very confident of giving the money. You have just noticed we are not even sure about the precise number of MSMEs. You're right, the budget has changed the definition and made it really more bigger. So therefore many more companies are coming into the MSME network. We are also not sure I'm sure the traders are not sure whether they are coming into the MSME network and therefore becoming eligible for resources from the banks. Given this challenge, I think the attrition rate, or call it the mortality rate in MSMEs, is very, very high. And that is why this uncertainty of the figure comes. Because the mortality rate is very high in MSMEs. And that is why the uncertainty with the commercial banks comes, because the mortality rate is so high. They're not sure if they give the money here, what's going to go to on the recovery passage. So I would say one is finance, which is foremost, and then there are lots of processes involved. When I was interacting with the MSMEs, I realized even getting it registered, you said there's 6 crore of them registered, but they were telling me that getting it registered itself is a challenge, because there can be mundane problems like the server not working, and they have to spend time looking at how to get it registered. They have to get it registered with the GST portal separately and powers separately and different places. So that's another challenge. They also found that region by region, state by state, for different products, there could be different rules for which they may not be aware. And that's another problem they face. So these are the top 3 that I would identify. But listening to all the speakers here, including you, I am again convinced all these issues that can come up, compliance, knowledge about the labor laws, the tax laws, the input markets, the export markets and the output market, the SEBI regulations, you need dedicated team of people working. And that's exactly what happened in agriculture universities. And once they were able to sort out, you could bring the problems of the farmers to the table of the policymaker and the government, and you could take the schemes of the government and the policymaker to the farmer. You found we became food sufficient and we could export food. Exactly like that is what is needed. The last point I want to make here is, you and me all wear very sophisticated shoes. Lots of research goes into our shoes. And this I'm using as an illustration. You have seen in our own country, Kolhapuri chappal. I'm using it as an illustration. You can multiply this illustration. Have you seen any research in Kolhapuri chappal? But what has happened is, we have shifted from our local make to more modern, well-researched shoes and chappals. Unless R&D keeps up with the requirements, the climate, the size of the feet and the shape of the feet, you will find that the domestic manufacturers who have not invested in R&D will lose out, and Western and foreign companies will overtake this business. It is in the MSME universities where free of cost one could take state by state products and do R&D and ensure that our products are on cutting edge. They not only dominate the domestic market, they're able to reach the international market too. So I am suggesting now, again and again, and my first piece on MSME University was published in Financial Express, where I said, this is the need of the hour now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can say without any hesitation that I have learned a lot with the experience of our panels guests. आप भी agree करते हैं ना? Yeah. So thank you very much to all the panelists, और बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपका कि आपने